Alright, YouTube, it's time for Occult Literature video number 104, The Canadian Herbal. It's an interesting work, 60 pages long, so on the middling side when it comes to the older herbal manuscripts. Some of these receipt books, they're like 100 pages. Some of them are really short, like you have to really, until you add the foreword, it's not even like 25 pages long. Link in the description to where you can purchase my edition of this work off of Amazon. Second link to my books blog as always. You can find other herbals and sort of botanical materials there, quack medicine, oracles, grimoires, alchemical texts, a little bit of everything for everybody if you're into some of that stuff that some people consider weird or fascinating, depending on your opinion on the subject. The Canadian Herbal delves into various botanical species that grow in and around what is now, I believe, central Canada, roughly speaking, central South Canada. In some of these regions and their medicinal qualities. Essentially, though, it's half receipt book, like a standard, 19th century medical receipt book. Simple cures, simple poultices, and so forth. You can create pills. They created actual semi-standardized pills back then, often with mandrake. I'm not sure that's the greatest idea in the world. Disclaimer, I'm not, by the way, telling you, and I put this in the book twice, not telling you any of this is safe. Some of it's fairly clearly not. But essentially, herbal recipes that can be created for certain diseases. Now, the first part of the book is a philosophical guide, about 6 pages long, that just deals with the basic standard ethos behind this type of medical treatment. It then goes into a lengthy receipt system for individual diseases and sort of the cures thereof, or treatments or preventatives thereof, for things like the dropsy or dyspepsia. Some of these terms are antiquated. You can Google them if you want. I partially modernized the language with this, but I was not able to modernize it all because sometimes when you have archaic medical terminology, either you're not sure what the counterpart is and it can't really be determined, or there is no actual modern counterpart. It's a term that's totally different now. We have to realize this is in the pre-modern stage of medicine. This is a text from the mid-1800s. I believe that it was actually first penned a little bit earlier than that, and that it was delayed in when it was actually delivered to the world as well. So it's a little bit more archaic than some of the other receipt books supposedly contemporary to it. It then speaks of some of the actual species themselves and their use within medicine, specifically what category they fit into, an emetic, a diuretic, or so forth, astringents, antiseptics. Some of those terms as well, like for instance the term laxative is specifically listed as a gentle purgative within this work. Now we understand in the modern sense a laxative, it helps you go poo-poo. It doesn't matter whether it's stronger or weaker, we would use the same term for both. Back then, totally different. It's a very interesting work. It goes into some of the vervian and celandine and smartweed and some of these plants. It's not as well entirely clear what specific plants are being talked about. Even for a person who has studied the botanical sciences, both in an academic and an amateur sense as I have, some of these terms are archaic enough and they come from a totally different culture, essentially. We're talking essentially the British Empire at the time. We're not talking about modern Canada. A very, very interesting work, but it can be difficult to determine exactly what's being brewed up at certain times. It also talks about poultices and so forth that are made with other materials. It's not just the botanical side. It also talks about the use of, for instance, mutton fat or pig fat, stuff like the lard. Some of these other materials that are added in for various purposes, the use of flour in pill making and so forth. Be interesting. I'm sure somewhere out there there's probably some person who has a basement full of packets of these semi-standardized pills. They're probably worth a fortune. Be interesting to see what they actually looked like. I can't imagine they were fully regular using the recipes that they're talking about. But it is one part recipe book, one part herbal, and it's pretty good, honestly. And I'm working on 2 other herbals at the moment. Once that's done, once those are complete, I'll go back to some of the other alchemical texts I think that I had in mind to begin working on. But for at least the rest of January, priority number 1 is expanding the herbal category, because right now I believe it is the smallest other than folk magic, which is so small it had to be wrapped up with Kabbalah, honestly, which is Jewish folk magic anyway. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a cultural variant of magic, so I just threw them in there rather than make a new category for two different texts. As before, link in the description to where you can purchase my edition of this work off of Amazon. It is the cheapest, as almost always. And it's not a facsimile, don't worry, it's hand-edited like everything. Second link to my books blog. That's about all. Peace out.